you talked about how some adults might make some comments about their girl, oh, well, you're running so awkward, or you keep tripping over yourself, or
Mhm.
I've heard this before and it breaks my heart, you gain weight. Okay,
Mm.
well, thank you, Captain Obvious. I mean, I just want to let you guys know, like, yes, like these things go on, but we don't need to like talk about it in like a condescending way.
Mhm.
Sometimes like we don't even need to bring it up. We just need to equip her with the tools, and that's strength training, speed training, deceleration
Mhm.
training, and just really empowering her during that time. And like Emily said, there might be a decline in performance and we might just have to weather the storm
Mhm.
and do what we can control for 6 to 12 months, right?
Mhm.
And it's hard with girls because boys, on the other hand, see those performance gains, whereas
Mhm.
girls, it's not so much.
Mhm.
So we just have to get through it, do what we can control, and then post PHB, she's had good training, and now's the time to really keep going with the performance training, the power work, the advanced
Mhm.
speed programs that everyone wants at age 8. That's
Mhm.
post PHB.
Mhm. Exactly. Oh my, you just like hit the nail on the head in that. Guys, our words matter. So, one, if she's going through this little awkward stage, lovely. That means that she's following the process of being a human. Like, yay, that
Yeah.
means your kid is developing. Like, that's expected. So, instead of like how we want to word it, like, let's say you're a parent and you're like, oh, like, you're noticing that your daughter is maybe moving a little awkwardly because she just had a big growth spurt. And you're like, I don't really know. Instead of saying, oh, you put on a little weight. Oh, you're moving weird. Instead, you can be like, oh, wow, you're hitting a point in your life where you're hitting puberty. All of this is very typical. It's time for us to really focus on training more so that we can really take advantage of the fact that you are developing. And that's it. And that's all you need to say because she's aware. She's very much aware of the fact that her body is changing. And that
It's a
is
hard time,
it's
like,
such a hard
regardless.
time. There's such a psychological impact here that, like, I think a lot of times we forget. I love it when I talk to a coach. I just talked to one yesterday. He was like 100%. He's the male coach, and he's like, I don't know what to say to these girls. They're all going through puberty. I don't know what that's like. I don't know what having a period is like. How can I ever say anything about it? But I
Yeah.
know it has to impact them. And I was like, oh my God, you might be the wisest dad I've ever met because it's so true. One, right? When we're talking about this peri PHV, so a year after these girls are going to get their onset of menses. But there's so many other things now that we have to factor in when working with them. One, is she going to experience some type of iron deficiency? Because iron deficiency anemia increases during this age group. So that's something to be aware of. Is she really fatigued? Is her sleeping different? We want to keep that in our in our mindset when we're working with them. Two, these girls are now experiencing a thing called a period. This has never happened to them before. It's weird when you first get your period because what is going on? What is going on down below? You're not sure. That is stressful. It is stressful to have something going on to your body that you have no control over. And yet here it is. So we have to take in consideration one, when did she first get her period? Is this still new for her? Because that's stressful because when it's still new, it's still figuring itself out. She doesn't know when it's coming. Has anyone even taught her how to track it? Is she using just like a calendar? Does she know what to expect? Also, she's probably growing some breasts. And guess what? That's also awkward and a little bit painful when that's happening. So we have to take this into consideration. And it's important. So, oh, yes, your daughter's performance is decreasing, but her body is going through so many changes. We have to just accept this. It's like, I feel like if we go into this anticipating my daughter is not going to be doing quite as well as she
Mhm.
used to, but we're going to get her above and beyond. It's like you have to take a step back before you can take two steps forward. And that's what this puberty period for girls is going to look like because she has to deal with so many other things. Also, we see a little bit of a rise of urinary incontinence during this period as well for this age group because, again, their hormones are out of whack, or hormones are going to affect our bladder's elasticity. And that's going to affect our ability to kind of like keep things in there when we're running and jumping. So your daughter may be experiencing this. And this is something that like she feels awkward about. So it's important to have female role models that can talk to these girls about it, because these changes are going on. And even though we as adults know, well, all of you guys are going through it, they're not thinking that way. And they haven't been taught how to communicate about this. And it's so important. With that, we also have to remember, lovely, she got her period. What if she didn't? What if she's 16 and she didn't get her period? That's a big alarm signal. Yeah, she's kicking butt on the soccer field, but inside her body is not kicking butt. So yeah, maybe you didn't really see a big decrease in performance, but physiologically, she is decreasing. Things are not going the way that they should. And that's something we have to discuss, because her overall health needs to be more important. Athlete is, or person is more important than the athlete. And then with that, we also have to acknowledge that eating disorders are very prevalent within this population at this time. Why? Well, because their bodies are changing. They have no control over it. And we live in a world where there's certain pictures of how the female body should look in their faces 24/7, and they don't really understand that no, most females don't look this way. No, your body will probably never look this way. And that's normal, because this is abnormal. This picture that you're seeing all the time on social media has been adjusted, it has been edited, and
Mhm.
that's okay. And we have to acknowledge that these are all things that the female athlete is experiencing during this, you know, period right after that peak height velocity. And it's going to impact her performance, her speed, her agility. All of them will be impacted, but it doesn't mean they're impacted forever. It just means she's developing. And we have to consider the person above the athlete during this time period and give her the tools and the mentorship to focus on herself as an athlete and as a person first.
There's so much that goes on during this time, and you just broke that down so nicely. And I think you're right. I mean, this is obviously why we did this podcast. We want parents and coaches to know what to expect going in. So it's
Mhm.
not as flooring when it happens and you see your daughter who was the fastest on the field at age 8 and the best soccer player out there, but then as soon as she gets her period and hits puberty at age 12, not so much. She might be the
Mhm.
slowest one out there, and
Mhm.
we just don't want to try to go against nature and this natural process. We can only do what we can control. And what we talked
Mhm.
about in this podcast as far as the proper performance training, and we'll do another episode on nutrition as well, because that
Mhm.
plays a role, especially with hormonal function, and also the eating disorder discussion is very serious. And when we get into things like the female athlete triad, the low bone mineral density, the menstrual dysfunction, the low energy availability. I'm going to link a blog on that below in the caption. So be sure to check that out. That's something that needs to be taken seriously. Having missed periods is not a badge of honor, and medical advice needs to be sought after, and just working
Mhm.
with someone. But yeah, there's a lot going on during this time, but the good news is we can surround her with the right female role models. We can give her a performance coach who understands female athlete growth and
Mhm.
maturation and training. So that's the good news. I mean, there's ways to just really empower her. And Emily, I want you to talk about like some of your experiences with your athletes, but with some of the girls I've worked with during this time, doing that strength training gives them a newfound confidence